Welcome to Scary Story Podcast. In this episode, you will hear the story of a mysterious discovery of a low-budget children's show, as well as the story of a strange tenant who leaves things behind after moving out. My name is Edwin, and here is a scary story. Doris and Friends. My sister and I walked home on Friday afternoons from school. Mom said that people cashed their checks on Fridays and that it was good for her and her friends at work to have extra time. And if we behaved, she might bring us leftovers from the cafeteria where she worked. I always wished for those club sandwiches, and sometimes I think back on the taste of them, unaware if I missed their texture or if I missed the feeling Mom created for both of us when she brought even just one half of it home. She used to make the most out of everything, even things we'd find on the street. I still have an old bicycle in the storage space that she made my dad fix up for my sister and I to share. It was this old red bike with a crooked wheel that made it feel cartoony. There was an episode of a Mickey Mouse show where he rides a bike with a flat tire, and it reminded me a lot of that. But Dad fixed it up, and he let my sister pick the color. Purple. He said that I would outgrow the bicycle first and that my sister would get to spend more time with it. Unfair, maybe, he said, but it was a rule of nature. Many things were rules of nature, according to my dad. As I grew older, I figured that it was his way of ending my infamous why loops, where I would ask why, genuinely interested in finding out the reason behind why people did what they did. It was a rule of nature, he said. It shut me right up. And part of that mentality of fixing things that I find, it stuck with me. And it showed up on that Friday with my sister down Julian Street, right around the corner from the video store and the place where Dad filled up the jugs of water, where they also sold phone calling cards. Out on the curb was a brown box with the word, in all capital letters, free. My sister looked up to me as if to ask for permission. I nodded. We both ran up to it. In it was a metal round box of cookies, the kind that all grandparents have, all scratched up, and another box of VHS tapes with a large faded picture of a clown, with a pink wig and a yellow dress. It was smiling next to two puppets who also shined their bright teeth at the camera. Something was not right with it. I looked up and away from the box, partially to make sure that nobody was seeing us taking stuff out of a stranger's box, and I guess also to see if I could see a camera crew or something, just like they used to have on the prank television shows with the hidden cameras. When I looked at the building above the video store, I could swear I saw somebody holding part of the curtain open. But when the curtain shuts slowly, you can almost never tell that it's actually moving. I rolled my eyes and the ugly green curtain was closed. I decided to ignore it. My sister grabbed the metal box and a set of baseball cards out of the box and asked me where to set the 3 video cassettes. There was almost nothing left in the box except for a bag with a mix of solids and liquids in it. It reminded me of the way Mom would carry the pink bag of ground beef at the counter at the big grocery store. It was gross, and I left it behind. My sister started running first. Instinctively, perhaps. Maybe that's why thieves ran away in the movies, even though nobody would ever be able to tell them apart in a crowd. I started feeling like a thief too when I chased after her. The neighbor from the apartment next door would let us hang out by the table on her porch until my mom would get home, which from what I remember would take less than an hour. The old lady looked like the stuff we were carrying and asked if we had cookies. "Oh no, we found the box," my sister said. The woman went back inside, shutting the pointless door with the net behind her without saying another word. My sister looked up at me again, with that "can I" look in her eyes. Her fingernails were already reaching for the rim of the cookie canister thing. I sighed. The nosy neighbor would be asking questions in no time, I told myself. Still, I watched her as she opened up the box. I thought I saw something moving in there. She noticed it too because she tried to shut the lid back where it was, but missed. And It crashed down to the concrete floor under the plastic lawn chairs we were sitting on, bouncing a few times. We were so busy looking at each other with our mouths open that we forgot for a second to take a look at what was inside. I don't know about my sister, but I couldn't believe what I saw. Jewelry. Just from a quick glance, I could tell there were several rings, 2 bracelets, one with the head of a horse, and the other with an oddly shaped heart. There was a necklace in there too. Those were the shiniest things I had ever seen up until that point, and I knew, again, with the instinct of a thief, to keep them a secret. So I reached in there and firmly told my sister to not tell anyone about it until Mom got home, to take out her crayons and we would draw something instead. She looked a little nervous, but followed along with my plan. I was already imagining Mrs. Mary listening to our conversation from the other side of the wall. We didn't really color anything. My sister started scratching at the blue crayon in her hand, getting blue under her fingernails and then biting it away. It was a thing she did when she got nervous. It was better than what she used to do, which was to bite the crayon directly. I was looking at her when I saw my mom walk up to the porch next door, waving at us. The metal rattled in my sister's bag as we ran toward the front door. When we told Mom about the jewelry, she didn't seem too excited until she saw it. She was excited over the bracelets mainly. She placed them on her palm and moved her hand as if calculating the weight of them. She must have asked us 4 or 5 times where we got them, and if anybody had seen us take the stuff, until she finally asked to see the tape that I kept talking about. Doris and friends, she said out loud as she was reading the box with the faded out picture. She handed it back to me, chuckled, and went to the kitchen to open up the paper bag, which I was hoping had one of those sandwiches in it. I recognized Mom's look. It was in the bag. The theme song started immediately after putting the cassette into the VCR. It was that warped electronic music that sounded familiar. At the time, it didn't seem so bad. But the lighting of the show was terrible when I reimagined the whole thing. And the clown. Her name was Doris, and she seemed scared. There was one scene from the first tape we saw that hasn't left my mind. Doris had 2 friends. A puppet named Kitty, who was a cat, and another one named Gumbo, who looked to be some sort of horse or anteater. They were in front of a large dollhouse, and Doris was supposed to start singing the happy birthday song, but she burst into tears. But then the scene didn't cut, and a cameraman or some big man in black clothes went up to her and grabbed her by the collar to the sound of a distinct pop. And then Doris tries to bend down to pick up something, but gets grabbed by the back of the yellow dress and pushed against a chair. 2 other women get up from behind the puppets, raising their hands enough for the camera to catch the shiny bracelets on the wrists, the head of a horse, and the lopsided shape of a heart. One of them screamed. The other one started crying. The man then left the scene and stepped back behind the camera. You could see Doris scanning the floor in search of her necklace. The tape then skips to a scene of Doris singing happily and the puppet swaying from side to side. The song ends with her extending her arms toward the camera, her body never leaving the chair. Then Doris stares at the camera, and right there, you can tell the difference between her mouth and the makeup faking her smile. And just like that, the tape ended. Unlocked. My parents rented out a room to a woman while I was out in college. She was foreign, barely spoke any English, but Mom always said that she was glad to have someone there who kept to themselves. And that she did. It took 5 or 6 visits for me to finally meet her, and even saying that is a stretch. I actually finally saw her, literally coming back from the grocery store before locking herself back in her room. She seemed uncomfortable, in a hurry, and scared. She zoomed past the entrance of the side of the house and closed the door to her room, soon followed by the beeps of the buttons of the microwave before starting to heat something up. She was wearing a comically large dark hat, and at least at the time that I saw her, she was dressed in a bathrobe with black boots. Dad wasn't too happy with her in the house. He claimed that he saw her bringing in a bag of candles, something that he used in his accusation that the woman was involved in witchcraft. And even though they never found out exactly what she was involved in, I can comfortably say that Dad wasn't completely wrong about his theory. I moved back in after graduating and trying to give myself time to think about what my next step should be. The woman would be leaving soon after her contract ended. Mom was the only one that knew her deal there, as she was the one that received cash in hand for rent and everything. She would speak with her whenever she had questions about how to get somewhere, or where she could buy a certain thing she needed. Dad used to tease that of course Mom would know where the witch store was, and Mom would act offended, but quickly forgot the joke. So when I had to clean up the room and set it up to try to make it my own a little bit, I was thrown off by the amount of things this woman left behind. Yarn, bags of salt, wigs, or the remains of what looked like wigs. Honestly, it made me think of the beauty and barber school students who practiced cutting hair on wigs. There was also photographs of windows and even places I recognized around the neighborhood. But then my doubts all went away when I found a crumbled up handwritten flyer with strips of the same phone number on tiny flaps on the bottom of it. Revenge, healing, rebirth. Call me. Mom sort of shrugged it off, but Dad laughed when I showed them. The celebration wouldn't last very long though. Soon, things started happening around the house. I would say it took a little over a week for things to become more apparent. Even though they're not that big of a deal, I still want to clarify that I've tried every single option possible to try and get this phenomenon to stop. But nothing has worked. You see, the room has a small exterior passage that leads to the backyard from the front of the house. It is also where the entrance to this room was located. From the front of the house, in order to get to the path to the backyard, you need to open a metal gate on the side of the property, held by a latch. We were supposed to lock it, but the rusty lock has been hanging off to the side for as long as I can remember. It wasn't something we talked about, but I think it was an unspoken belief that the old lock would get stuck if we ever shut it. What if a key no longer fit, or if it fell apart from the inside once the latch clicked? Nobody wanted to take the chance. But one of the rules that Mom had set for the woman who rented out the room was that she was supposed to lock the gate whenever she left. And follow the rules was what she did. At least that's what Mom said. The lock would be set every single night and unlocked every single morning. And that's where the problem was. We all heard the lock rattling. We all talked about it whenever it happened. It rattled on its own. We tried to ignore some of the other things, like the lights flickering on and off before staying completely lit, but the sound of a ghostly microwave going off in the middle of the night. But by far the creepiest thing that happened was the metal gate incident, as my dad likes to call it. I'm not sure if I can call myself fortunate for having my dad there to witness it, or if I would have been better off having seen it for myself, since by now I would have blamed my imagination and it would have been likely forgotten. I was woken up by the sound of the metal gate rattling in the middle of the night. The sound of the heavy lock against the metal bar where the latch was a sound I could identify easily, and that is exactly what it sounded like. I sat up on my bed, waiting for it to go away, when I suddenly heard the familiar sound of the gate squeaking open. someone was trying to get in. I reached for the second door that led to the hallway and tiptoed my ways to my parents' room. "Dad, someone's trying to get in," I said. Dad rolled off the bed and walked to the kitchen window, which had a view of the metal gate on the side of the house. We both saw it. The silhouette of a woman floating away from the house and toward the sidewalk. Dad ran for the front door while I kept an eye on the shape as it stood in the middle of the front yard. Just like that, it disappeared. Dad opened the door and flicked on the light of the porch, but the silhouette was gone. He looked in my direction, tilting his head and scratching the side of it. Then he smiled, and without saying a word, he started walking away and back to his room. He stopped at the start of the hallway and looked back at me. "You saw that too, right?" he asked, not waiting for an answer from me. I simply stood there as he walked away, my heart still about to jump out of my chest. Scary Story Podcast is produced by me, Edwin Covarrubias. The ad-free listening experience is being populated now on Patreon and on Apple Podcasts, where you can unlock access to ad-free content, bonus stories, and even commentary on some of the stories. Links and more information will be in the description of this episode. Until next time, thank you very much for listening.